This is the Know Your Place podcast. On this week's episode, Jay joins me to talk about whether or not we think there's a New World Order and what that means. Stay tuned. Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. This is the Know Your Place podcast, and technically we are live streaming, but I didn't really plan this out ahead of time. So cool. I'm becoming more and more a YouTuber. This is what half of my favorite YouTubers do. Say hello to the fans, Jay.
What up, fans? How's that? Was that a good fan welcoming?
Yes, that was
Awesome.
all right. Cool. Well, we wanted to come on this week, and because I just love to make this podcast as controversial as possible. We're going to talk about the concept of a new world order.
Yeah, buddy.
Yes.
New World Order. Illuminati.
Oh gosh. What have you done to me, Jay?
What? No, man, no. Don't blame this on me. You're the original conspiracy theorist. When Charles and I worked together, that was one of the main topics whenever we would talk to each other. It was conspiracy theory type stuff. And it's fun stuff, and I think a lot of people dismiss conspiracy theory, and it's really conspiracy fact. So this is, I guess, what we're here to talk about.
I was Alex Jones before it was cool.
You were Alex Jones. Yeah. No, it's funny because when you start getting into conspiracy facts, I guess, and then you go back and you listen to Alex Jones and some of his older stuff, you can't help but some of it actually making sense. So there's a lot of dots to connect out there, and hopefully we can connect some dots here on your podcast.
Yeah, hopefully we'll connect some dots today. So let's start off. I like to start these kind of big topics like I did. Pulled a lot of just kind of know what modern interpretations are of these things, and they don't really have a good concept of the past of them, if you will.
Right. Okay. Well, sorry, man, you cut out a little bit, so I didn't hear the first part of what you were saying. Were you talking about defining what the New World Order is in a classical sense? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, basically, I want to start off with us first saying, what do you think a New World Order is? What would you define it as, Jay?
Well, my definition of that has changed drastically here recently. The New World Order, I'm sorry if I can even talk correctly tonight. The New World Order, to me, it is people that have managed to get into high places of power. This is like the secret societies that John F. Kennedy talked about. It's been going on for centuries, actually. I mean, this can be traced to like the Vatican. It can be traced to so many high power places, and these just essentially evil people that get into these power positions and use their power to blind people and make things go the way for their own benefit. And that can include money, drugs, and it can go into even some really bizarre stuff on top of that too. So that's kind of my take on the New World Order. And it's not anything new. It's been around for a long time, potentially since the country actually was founded. So there's, one thing that I'm a little bit worried about with this podcast is how many tangents we're possibly going to go off of, and trying to come back and all that good stuff. Because this rabbit hole is it's a deep one for sure. So what's your take on it though?
Yeah, essentially you kind of parroted what I was going to lead with. This is not really anything new. I mean, if you look back to sort of even, if we want to go as far back as royal times, if started in the 1800s, but some people like to even start it all the way back with masonry guilds in the 1300s, and even farther back, shows like Ancient Aliens and stuff, which I don't know how far out there we want to get with that.
Oh, I'm willing to go far out. Well, actually not too far out, because it's funny, because with the main thing people have to remember, especially nowadays, is even if something sounds totally bananas, you still have to question it. And there gets to a point where things become like, it's mathematically impossible that it's just a coincidence, So, I mean, it does, to me at least, it goes pretty darn deep. So I don't know. Well, I think we should just roll see where we go, man.
Yeah. So, like I said, the reason why I want to start the focus on the 1800s, and then we'll sort of build into some of this stuff, is because I think it's very obvious during that period of the Napoleonic era and previous to it that most royal families at that point have become completely interconnected through, right?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
So that is a world order in a way, right? That is, there's a certain group of people, and then there's everybody else, right?
Right.
And people think that was some long time ago. That wasn't that long time ago. America was really, during its founding, the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
So most places had sort of a collusion of just people in charge that were this royalty, and they were all about keeping each other propped up. In fact, America scared a lot of people when we first were created.
Yes, indeed, because it goes against what these people that we're talking about, it goes against what they want to do. And it's like when somebody gets backed into a corner, those who scream the loudest are the most guilty. So yeah, as you were, sorry. We're
this is good.
Yeah.
But anyway, so why I say that is then as we progressed into the early 1900s, sort of autocratic rule in Europe began to die, right? Mm-hmm. Especially during World War I.
Right.
And so if you look at that time period, that's when the first novels that are really widely accepted as dystopian novels were published.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very interesting, because that for there to be a dystopian novel, the writer has to fear a new world order, right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, a
Orwell
lot of
people... Go ahead. I'll let you talk, Lil.
Oh, no, it's cool. I was just going to make a quick point out something really quick, that when a lot of people think of utopia, folks, utopia is not what you want to aim for, because when you get to a point where everybody's, they're happy living in bliss and living off the fruits of the land, and, just get to this point where everything's at peace. I mean, then the human condition, which is for us to work and have purpose and do stuff like that, a utopia is actually not a good thing, because when you get there, where do you go from there? And with me, like, it may be a little bit blunt sounding, but it sounds like that just is a path to starvation and genocide. So, but anyway,
we'll touch upon that more.
Yes, we will.
So why I say this is because a lot of people in modern times assume that the first author to really address this issue was George Orwell, when in fact, the first real dystopian novel that people really point to as being written was by H.G. Wells in 1899 with, The Time Machine, and he wrote another one called When the Sleeper Wakes. And prior to that, there was dystopian stuff in Gulliver's Travels. So we got to understand that this concept is not new. I just really want to put that out there. There's always going to be this I guess, ebb and flow in society, that there will be people fearing a group of people being in charge, and there being everyone else.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, and if you look around at the powerful entities that we're talking about. I mean, again, a good example is like the Vatican, and you see all these allegations against like children and stuff coming out of the Vatican, and it's a place that has walls to surround a city basically, but they go around preaching for open borders, and the Pope is heavily guarded and he has his Pope mobile, but calls for abolishing guns. And it's this weird thing you just got to question. It's like, okay, well, at what point, like what makes you so special to be the ones that are protected and you hide behind walls, but you're telling the rest of us to do the exact opposite? And it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. So now that we've sort of addressed what I think is the history of the New World Order, if you will, or let's sort of dive into where we think the power of it is driven from. Now, there are a good deal of people who've discussed this term called the Illuminati.
The Illuminati. Yes, the Illuminati.
The biggest one we'll hit on first because that's probably the biggest term that's used when we bring this up. So what do you define as the Illuminati, Jay?
Oh boy. Okay, so the Illuminati, man, my brain goes in so many directions on that one. So current day, and again, this is good. People that know me and they hear me, they're going to be like, Jay has completely lost it. But it's like the Clintons, the Obamas, they're workers in that. But the real Illuminati, I think, are like the Rothschilds, the royal family. Again, I keep going back to the Vatican because that's just a deep, dark one. And I want to stress that, like, I don't want people to think that, like, I hate Catholics or anything. I absolutely do not hate Catholics, and I don't think Catholic people are bad people. But the people that are in power in Catholicism, you guys need to start questioning those folks some more, because there is some shady stuff that's going on, and it's going on a global scale. But this Illuminati, like the Rothschilds, they're in control of. Aren't they in control of? They're in control of the Fed, aren't they? The Rothschilds.
Okay, anyway, so we were talking about the Vatican, right?
I know, I had to just go off on that tangent because it's funny. It's funny. The one Skype / chat that I do that fails, and first time in a long time, is when we're talking about the Illuminati. So, you got a question. So, but yeah, anyway, going back on what we were talking about. There are some people that are just like, again, the Rothschilds, the royal family. You've got some people that have gotten into our government, like the Clintons, the Obamas, and even the Bushes too. I mean, the Bushes were part of the Skull and Bones secret society. I don't know if they still are or what, but there's just a bunch of that stuff going on all over the world. And I don't know, man. There's a lot of dots that are connecting to that, and some things that are connecting with it is like a really big one that I've come to know here in the last few months or so is the amount of child trafficking that goes through all these entities. And it is alarming what goes on within, like, all these things are tied to these powerful people with that subject. And I think that's like a kind of a glue that keeps all these powerful entities together, and does what you hear Alex Jones talk about the globalists and all that. And he's actually not lying. There are globalists out there that want a one world government where they can control you and just all this other horrible stuff. So hopefully that's it. Did I lose you again? What the? Are you there?
Yeah, finally fixed it again. Sorry about that.
Man, I was going off pretty good there. So
okay, that's fine. We'll just re-enter the conversation where you were. Alrighty.
You can go back and edit this, I guess, right?
Yeah, I can easily go back and edit it. That's why I haven't invited a bunch of people. So.
All right. Cool. So what was the last thing that you heard, or do you just want me to start back what it was?
No, we'll just go back to the Vatican talking about that. So. Well, actually, we were in the New World Order, and we were talking about defining Illuminati.
Yes,
so you see all these modern groups of people as a part of the Illuminati. But do you know the history of the Illuminati?
I don't know it very well, but this is something I started looking into a little bit. And you had mentioned Freemasons earlier. And I remember when we worked together, I was talking to you about it was the Joe Rogan podcast that had Randall Carlson on it, who was talking about like it was kind of like fringe science as far as like our Earth's history and how it shaped itself and stuff like that. And I had mentioned to you that he was a Freemason, and I remember your reaction was whoa, got to watch for those Freemasons. and I think that that's a big part of it as well too. So is that part of the history as well that you might be getting into, or what do you got? Throw it at me, man.
Well, people have always been quite fearful of Freemasons just because they are a secret society. I mean, what are they hiding, right? Why can't you just publicly talk about Freemasonry?
Yeah, and well, this is something I've read on lately, that when you get into like the 33rd degree Freemasons, that it gets Luciferian at that point, and it's when I don't. You go ahead.
Anyway, so what I mentioned with the history of the Illuminati, sort of, the term comes out of the the mid 1800s, and it's a group in Bavaria that was called the Illuminati, and they sort of started out of this belief that once you acquire full knowledge, you become illuminated. Now, as you can imagine, part of that theory or part of that ethos was very anti-religious in nature.
Yes, it's very anti-God. It's very anti-God indeed.
So, well, I don't necessarily. I will come flat out and say I don't have any proof that these groups are part of what I would call an Illuminati. I just think you have to realize sort of what the history and nature is behind that, and that sort of explains modern behaviors in modern groups.
Exactly. And again, this like kind of what I was saying with the Vatican and the Catholics. I mean, Freemasonry, and I mean, there's different levels of that. And I was actually talking to my mom about this recently. Apparently, my great grandmother's sister married a Freemason, and my mom, like, we were talking a little bit about this kind of talk correctly. I'm sorry. We were talking about this a little bit, and she was talking about, it's like, yeah, I just remember being like really freaked out by him, and he was really high up there, and he was very kind of secretive guy. And she was telling me that what she's learned a little bit about the Freemasons is that there's kind of like an outer shell that protects the inner workings, I guess, that are the really dark parts, and that a lot of people actually on the outside, you know, they're not bad people. They don't mean bad or anything like that, but possibly that they're sheep in a bigger game kind of situation.
Well, and that is what is the natural tendency of a large group like that. It's not just limited to Freemasonry. You know, a lot of people could make that argument about sort of the old style Mormon church back in the day and groups. I don't want to slander a bunch of groups in one.
Yeah, let's.
But
we hate nobody, folks. We love everybody. Just, yeah, I don't know.
But my point is so, you know, and that's sort of what the big criticism was of the whole royal order to begin with, right? Is that you have people dying for country, but they really didn't know what their kings were doing, and their kings didn't really give a crap about them. They just wanted to preserve the royal order.
Yeah. Yeah, the history of a lot of this, again, this is stuff that I'm learning. You're a lot more well versed in your history than I am. But it's amazing how long this kind of stuff has gone on for. I mean, when you think about the Illuminati, I mean, I'm sure that most people probably think that's been going on within, you know, just since this last century or so, but it's been going on for a long, long time. And, you know, even I mean, George Washington, he was a Freemason. And so it's, yeah, again, this is all stuff that I'm just starting to delve into. So maybe I'm sure you have more insight on that kind of stuff.
There's lots of rumors and theories about our founding fathers and their connections to Freemasonry and the foundation of our country. And there's claims of symbology and lots of our stuff that is Freemason. It's so that sort of branches into the other thing I want to talk about when we talk about a New World Order or an Illuminati or, you know, Freemasonry or whatever. Is there's a sort of, it's either a cult or religious, right? There's a spirituality side to this.
Indeed.
A lot of people think that when we talk about this, we're just saying, who's ever in charge of this world order are just bad people. Well, it's deeper than that, right? It's not just about the amorality. There's some kind of ethos that these people have or are a part of, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you mentioned the symbolism, and that's a massive thing. And I think that what because here it's what July 1st, 2018, and I mean nobody can argue right now that we are in a just weird, weird, weird time, and a lot of weird stuff is happening. There's I don't know about you, man, but just the way people are acting, calling for violence and riots and stuff like that, and yeah, it's pretty intense. And with the symbolism thing, what I'm trying to tie that into is this is something that's been pointed out to me recently, is that a lot of times when like a lot of these shootings and stuff happen, and you can look this up too, that there are people a lot of times respond on the scene who are donning Freemason symbolism. There's one I know, I think it was in San Bernardino, a guy was being interviewed was wearing a Freemason cap. And what was the other one? It wasn't Parkland,
Florida.
Florida. Yes. Where another guy was interviewed wearing wearing a Masonic necklace, and so it's things like this. You start noticing these little patterns and all, and you just have to ask these kind of questions. And then when you look deeper into these things and kind of like what some of the rituals that they have are, and I don't know. I think the symbolism will be the downfall of the Illuminati because they just seem to have this love for it. And like you said, it's this weird spiritual thing. And I mean, I have my theories on what that is. It's a little out there. Again, if we want to go down that rabbit hole, take my hand, but so what are your thoughts on that though?
Well, I think I think there's a lot of things that, like you said when we started this, there's a lot of things that are hard to just explain away as coincidence, right?
Yeah.
And I sort of come at it from I come at it from more of the political angle. Although, like I said, I do think there is a weird dark spirituality there in a way.
Yeah.
It's like a bad timeline or something. But I point to lots of different events. Things like 9/11 and at the school shootings. I mean, I constantly post this every time somebody talks about a mass shooting, but there was this movie made in the 70s called Network. And
not familiar with it.
In the movie, this news outlet is falling apart. It's like the fourth major news outlet, and it's not doing well. So their lead anchor is told he's going to be fired, right?
Okay.
And he whacks out on screen and just starts going into crazy rants and says, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." A lot of people have seen this movie who are older than us. Mm-hmm. Well, people end up loving that, right? They end up tuning into the station and shoots to the top because this guy just comes on and does these crazy rants, and then they hire a hypnotist to be on his show and all kinds of things that just aren't really real news anymore, right? Mm. They're more like fake news, if you catch my drift.
I do.
And then he ends up going. Then he makes the mistake of going on air and slamming the fact that there's a whole bunch of Middle East oil money invested in the news media. Well, after that, they take him in. And he goes and he meets with the president of the network, and he then informs him that, yes, we do take Middle Eastern oil money, but it's part of also some kind of big plan. And basically, this guy's already gone slightly psychotic, so he gets him to buy into this thing, right? So then he starts going on TV and spewing a very pro-corporate long-term view, like a pro-multinational point of view. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the viewership hates that. It's just nobody wants to watch that.
Not good
right?
TV. Yeah.
And so then the people who are running the people who are in charge for the numbers are like, crap, we're about to lose our ranking and everything, right? Well, they come up with this great plan. At the end of the movie, they hire terrorists to go in the studio and murder him and that's how it ends.
I'm sorry, you cut out just a little bit. I didn't hear what happened with the murdering part.
They murder him on air. They murder the anchor on air.
Whoa, that's intense.
And So why I say this is they basically manufactured news in that situation, and they manufactured violent news.
Yeah.
And if they were willing to put this in a movie in 1976, I don't know, man.
I know it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's funny. When our feed cut out, I was jokingly say that George Soros heard us and he cut off our stream. But he's actually a big player in what you're talking about. That wants to get his fingers into globalism. He wants the one world government, the one that's funding these violent protesters like Antifa and stuff like that. And I mean, the dude's got a ton of money and he's just sinking in all these things that are just horrible for society. And he is an evil man. And so he's deep in with media outlets too. So, you get like your CNNs that we know that they're just dumpster fires. It's just a dumpstery garbage fire what CNN is, and it's manufactured, and anybody can tell this that has half a brain. You can just tell how biased it is and just how unaligned it is with life.
But yeah, so I guess my point is I don't I want to believe. Okay, I'll put it this way: I want to believe that people wouldn't just be on board with causing these mass shootings and murdering people for the sake of instituting some kind of fear in the populace. But I'm not very convinced.
I'm not either, and I started to notice that these shootings that happen, I mean, they usually they coincide with something else going on. Like what the recent one, the Annapolis shooting. To me, that was a false flag. There was a deterrent from the Rod Rosenstein investigative report stuff that's going on right now. And if you look into what had happened, the guy that the shooter of it, you mentioned therapists earlier, because this is hilarious. If you Google that guy's name, you can find these emails that he had. I forget who it was with. I don't know if it was with a therapist or what, but basically the guy it's believed he was MK Ultra. And we talk about like the mind control stuff, and a lot of people dismiss that. It's like, oh, put your tinfoil hat on or whatever. It's like, no, humans are pretty clever and they can do some pretty wacky stuff. And you mentioned, I think, hypnotism earlier. And I think that, it's really complicated because it deals with like master persuasion and the right type of person to take advantage of. And that there are people that want to like take advantage of people for their own thing or their own society or whatnot. And yeah, it's when you get into it, it gets pretty disgusting. But back to you.
So yeah, that's basically my point with this is I don't necessarily have some kind of proof where I can just come in here and show anybody that there's a new world order and it has a particular agenda per se.
And you can't, it's made to be that way, man. Like, that's why you have to like question everything and connect the dots. And again, when it gets to a point when things are just, it's mathematically impossible that it's all just coincidences, and, I'll save my banger for a little bit. You keep going.
So I don't have any proof of that, but what I can say is that it's interesting how certain things continue to prevail or how certain things happen, right?
Right.
It's contrary to what nature is, right? Like,
yes. It's contrary to the human condition.
To me, the perfect example is after 9/11, the aftermath of that.
Yeah.
So 9/11 happens, and suddenly America, of all countries, is okay with people spying on everyone, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, we would not be okay with that pre 9/11. I don't think anybody would. And people all the time are like, oh, stop saying that that's the point that America changed. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to stop saying that.
And you shouldn't either. I mean, the NSA has some corrupt people on it. I mean, it is illegal to spy on American citizens. And that's just the law. I mean, come on. And then when you go and change that after some big thing like that, I mean, if you think about it from, I guess your average person's point of view, that it's like, well, yeah, there was some scary stuff, and buildings fell, a lot of people died. I mean, maybe we do need up our security a little bit, but like we're saying with this conspiracy thing, I mean, I personally think that 9/11 it is a conspiracy. I think that people really conspired. I mean, not just outside the whole Al Qaeda type situation. I mean, I think that people within our government were partly responsible for that too. And again, I can't just sit here and just give just this bomb. It's like, bam, this is what's going to make you can believe it. Yeah, I mean, you have to go and dig into it and look into it too. But yeah, the NSA and the surveillance thing, that's the whole Big Brother thing. It's really, really creepy, and it gets freakier as the days go on with our access to phones and social media, and get these warnings on your phone. It's like, do you want to allow your microphone and your camera to access, all your stuff? And yeah, go ahead, sure. Or else, your app doesn't work. And NSA is scary, man. It's real scary.
Well, I mean, the movie Enemy of the State pretty much laid it all out there in 1998. Not much has changed, mind you.
Right.
But, yeah, so why I say this is, again, why I want to just hit this point with people. It's not that I have proof that any XYZ person is in on any particular thing. It's that there's a lot of things, when you put them together, they look like a trend and cannot be explained away by coincidence.
Exactly.
And that's why I never stopped talking about this 9/11 thing, or Paul Wellstone, or this movie Network, or the movie Enemy of the State, is because these things are part of that.
Exactly.
You have to understand all of them together to get what we're talking about.
I mean, now, you can even look at a movie like Eyes Wide Shut. I don't know if you've seen that one or not. It was Kubrick's last film, and Kubrick mysteriously died, shortly after all that. And I think that was a big hole, like punching a hole in the bubble kind of situation. Have you seen Eyes Wide Shut?
I haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut, but I have heard of it.
Okay, so when I was younger, I used to just devour horror movies. I loved them, and this is before it got into the Saw movies, where it's more like I hate the term, quote unquote, torture porn type stuff. Like, that stuff sickens me. It's like, bring back the corn syrup blood, bring back the bad latex masks. That's where the good horror movies are. But nothing really freaked me out all that much as far as horror movies go. But when I watched Eyes Wide Shut, that left me just uncomfortable. That's like the David Lynch kind of uncomfortable, if you know what I mean. So, nothing weird or crazy happens, but just that overall sense you get, you're just like, oogie. But Eyes Wide Shut, it's a Kubrick film, and it's been a while since I've seen it, but I do remember Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman were in it, and Tom Cruise ends up going to this big party where it's a bunch of elites and stuff like that. And he goes into this one room where it's obviously some kind of cultist setting. Everybody's in their robes, and then they're donning masks, and there's one guy in a throne in the middle, and he goes and he has to wear a mask as well. It's a masquerade, and he finds out he's actually not supposed to be there, and they let him go. And then after he gets out, he starts noticing more things around in the real world that are just really strange. At the end, there's he sees a girl, and I forget if it's a girl or a daughter or whatever, but in a shopping mall type situation, and there were board games that were in the background, and they were called Magic Circle, and just all these things that are placed here and there and around the world. And I think what the Illuminati does too is we talked about symbolism, is it's all right under our noses, and I think that we've just been normalized to a lot of it over time, and it's all right there. And again, this is why I say symbolism could possibly be their downfall, because it's just, I don't know, it's just this gross, weird, secret Luciferian. I don't know. This is where I have to kind of stop myself, to where I don't sound too tinfoil hatty. So.
Okay, so now that we kind of broached that subject, let's sort of talk about what the goal of a world order would be and why it's a problem per se. Okay. In modern aspects, because I think we sort of hit on the historical quite a bit.
Okay.
So what I see is the modern world order is sort of the fact that we all as people just blanketly accept things that come down from things like the UN or the EU or places like that. You know, it's
Yep.
very odd, right?
Mhm.
Like, for example, the EU wants to put some ban on memes or something, right? Like, how would that
It,
be okay? Why would
wait,
that ever be
it
okay?
it's moved from knives to memes now. I didn't hear about
Yeah,
the memes one.
yeah. There's supposedly something they're trying to pass to ban memes, and Facebook claims that they might go along with it because they have, standards or whatever. You should go look it up. But anyway,
Good Lord. Okay. Yeah. Facebook, man. Facebook is also complicit in some stuff as well. Like I've actually Facebook, Twitter, and unfortunately Instagram too. And I'm not on any social media besides Instagram and Reddit. And it's like, yeah, there's some shady stuff that goes on with that too, for sure.
so in my opinion, the reason why it's sort of never been defeated is because we don't talk about it in the terms of they just want to keep a world order, right?
Right. And
Like some people really want it to be, and I'm not saying they're not sinister, okay, but it's not sinister in the upfront, in your face kind of way. They don't just come in and like, this isn't like some 1300s back and forth battle of the roses type of
no.
stuff,
No,
right?
it's weird. I think everything's been put under this big guise of like, like equality and respect. These gender fluid people or these black people or just it always seems to like pick out and single out all these things, and they do it under the guise of equality. But really, when you're doing that, I mean, you're just drawing more attention to that kind of thing, and you make the problem actually worse. So
Well, Kurt
it's
Vonnegut actually wrote a short story in 1961 called Harrison Bergeron.
yeah, I've read that one, but man, it's been a while. I have
And
to go
that
back
one
and
pretty
read that.
much hit it all in the head. It's a modern society where they try and make everyone equal by
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
handicapping
yeah, yeah.
anyone with special abilities.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
of course, yeah. Anyway, but so why I say this is because I see it in sort of weird ways. Okay, like for example, I'll give you a great example. Why if we are a bunch of Western countries and we're democracies, why are we okay with what Erdogan's doing in Turkey?
Yeah. I don't know, man.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying we need to go in and depose him personally or anything like that, but you ever notice how like nobody comes out and publicly criticizes him except like the Dutch? They did it once. Everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, everybody's alt-right in the Netherlands." It's like, no, it's just not free.
Well, it's funny because, you want to talk about a conspiracy theory, and I encourage everybody to look this up. But there is, if you were to go and look at the 1933 paramilitary wing of Communist Party of Germany and go look at their logo, which, this is shameful because my dad's actually from Germany. Antifaschistische Action. I forget, but it's like these two flags, and it says basically in German, and you can tell it says anti-fascist action. The 2017 paramilitary wing of the Democratic Party of America. Go look their logo up.
Oh yeah, I've seen it before. It's identical.
Anti-fascist action, and it's just all this under this guise of being equality. We need to redistribute wealth, and it just goes against the individual personal responsibility, and it just tries to it's like pulling this big like fad like groupthink blinder thing over everybody's eyes, and it's just really sick because it stifles people, it stifles countries, it stifles progress because you start setting baselines for everything, and then there's those powerful people at the top or behind their big old walls, and they say, well, we should have open borders and everybody should be equal, and nothing ever grows or prospers that way. And then when you put it in on a global scale, it ends up in, like I said earlier, bold starvation and genocide.
So yeah, if I were to define what I call a world order and what their goal is, I think their goal is no individuality, a sort of crush of any kind of dissent or difference. And the reason, and I noticed this on full display with what happened in Catalonia, because if these people who claim that they don't like what's in charge in certain countries, because I know people from all ends of the spectrum. If they claim they don't like, if they don't claim they don't like a right wing in charge, why aren't they supporting Catalonian independence, right? Because Catalonia is a largely, and I don't really like using the terms left wing and right wing because they don't mean anything to me anymore. But,
no, it's actually just good and evil. That's what people need to focus on when, like, if you're talking about the Illuminati, that's really what it comes down to, is good and evil. And if you think good and evil is arbitrary, you really got to rethink some things, and you got to brush up on your history, because that actually exists.
But yeah, so what I'm trying to say is, like, this is a group of people who Catalonia would probably be run in a socialist type of manner, being repressed by what we would call sort of a fascist right-wing government, and nobody in the American quote-unquote left-wing cares, right?
Yeah.
You don't see anything out there saying, oh, the only people that really cared about the Catalonians were like a very few amount of people. And I think that's just telling, again, people don't want to redraw our borders, or like the Ukrainian thing, right? If anybody knows anything about the history of Ukraine, they know that half of it is Russian and half of it wants to be Western. Why does it have to stay together as one country? Why does anyone have to intervene? Why can't they just draw a line?
Yeah.
It's an even split. I mean, if you look at their election map, it's a dead even split.
Yeah.
But you got these people in charge, they want to preserve the world order.
Yeah.
It can't be different. It can't change. And I think ultimately they're going to fail, because that's not human nature.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's go into some dark territory. How about we do that? Right. What do you think? So you kind of proposed this question. We talked about it just a little bit. It's like, what is the purpose of the Illuminati? Like, what is the purpose of the New World Order? And what is like their driving thing? Like, what do you think's the, like, one of the central points, or if there's even just maybe multiple points, what do you think some of those things are that keep them doing what they're doing?
That keep them doing what they're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I said that basically I believe the goal of the world order is to preserve the world order, right, unironically. I'm saying this completely unironically. They don't want any change. It doesn't matter what kind of change it is, what you want to label it, some kind of socialist change or capitalist change or whatever kind of change you want to label it. They don't want that. They want their world order preserved.
They want you to change to them.
Right. So what do I think that they're... So basically, goodness, I forgot the question again. Go ahead, repeat that.
Well, we're talking about like the actual things, like why
they do that.
Why they're, because, and you'd mentioned something interesting, and hopefully maybe you can elaborate it on a little bit more about, talk about when you get to a certain degree, you're quote unquote illuminated, and trying to reach this kind of higher state. So I don't know, what factors do you think? Like, what are they
able to succeed? That was what you were trying.
I mean, is it like money? Is it like, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, part of it is money and power, but it's something even deeper than that. Okay, because there's lots of people who could amass money and power. You don't necessarily have to be a genius to amass money and power. I think our country has proved that. Yeah. But what I think is more going on here is that the people... So if we're saying that the Illuminati exists, and it's a sort of like... in what they're trying to... Have you ever heard of the old play called Faustus?
I've heard of Faust before, but I don't know
it's a similar
anything about
thing.
it.
Basically, the guy sells his soul to the devil and amasses all kind of human power that possibly amass. And that's what these people are after. They're after the most amount of a human power and prestige they... Okay. And so they are smarter than us. Okay, they are more equipped, or whatever you want to say, right?
Yeah.
They have all the human intelligence they can possess.
Right.
The
Money and
problem
resources.
is,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
right? The problem is though, is in doing that you lose your soul, right? I
Right.
mean, that's the end moral of Faust is that he loses his soul in the process, right? Well, that's true,
Mm-hmm.
right? So these people, and I'm not saying that people need to stop trying to be intelligent or study things.
Right.
That is not what I'm saying. But people need to understand is that these people have lost their soul.
Yeah.
They and so they can't.
There's a I think there's a thing that I feel like I need to mention, that there's a difference between information and wisdom. And I mean, not saying that these people like have no wisdom. I'm sure they have wisdom through all their bad actions and stuff, but it's more of like just a quest for just information, just sucking information, regurgitating information that, you know, they want to put out there again to, like you said, to not have their system changed. So
Right.
yeah.
So what I'm saying is they don't have a soul.
Yeah.
So that's why they can't. It's hard for us normal people with souls and humanity to understand them,
Yeah.
to just even understand it, right? And that's why it's hard for people to even combat it, because you know, you talk about things with the Vatican and the priests, you know, and I'm sure, you know, you've heard all the molestation charges, right? And somebody says, well, how can somebody in charge of the Vatican shield a priest from once they find out about that?
Yeah, and this is kind of the banger that I was kind of hoping we'd get into a little bit, because it's if you want to hear my take on what the Illuminati, what a thing that really keeps them together. You mentioned I mentioned the trafficking, you mentioned the molestation and stuff like that, and I've connected dots, and you know, I've got my faults. My brain doesn't work right all the time, but I'm not a dumb dude. I'm actually a pretty smart dude. And the dots that I connect is that a lot of this involves child trafficking. And I think here's where we go. Here's where we go, Dark Charles. That I think there's an element of human sacrifice that's at play, because you see, especially with the trafficking here in the States, we have seen a huge uptick in arrests and people that operate like pedophilia rings. There have been big busts. There are like 30,000 sealed indictments right now. Jeff Sessions has hired on like the slew of attorneys. He just hired, I forget how many it was, but they're busting these people. I mean, it's a far greater amount under these first couple of years under Trump than what it was the entire time Obama was in office. And, you know, you hear people complain about the kids in cages type situation and all that. And if you look at it, I mean, on the FBI's website, you can see that, or maybe it was the Department of Justice, I forget, one of those two, where of the 12,000 kids that came over the border, only 10,000 or only 2,000 were actually with their families, and 10,000 kids were being smuggled in. And then you look at the Vatican and its history with children, and you can go even deeper if you want to get really into it. You look at the Podestas, you look into the Clintons, you can even look into the Obamas for that. And when you start to connect all these dots, it's like, well, why do these people, what's the deal with children? And a lot of this stuff is coming up now, and this is something that's going to be a really hard thing for people to digest, because it's been normalized in our society that violence and sex against kids is just becoming more and more normal. I personally talk to people, I talk to people about this kind of stuff, and they're like, dude, that's just what goes on. It's been like that forever. It's like, but you're normalizing it, and we need to talk about this because it's like, it's a huge, huge issue. And again, I talk about the human sacrifice thing, and have you ever heard of adrenochrome by chance? Do you know what that is?
You're talking about the rumors around the Podesta and Pizzagate scandal with the human sacrifice.
Yeah, and that and it's starting to get blown out now, because again, with like the IG report, one thing that's going to come back and it's going to get hit on is the crimes against children thing. And if you look at like the Podesta stuff, you can get into the Pizzagate stuff too, and it all ties to the same thing. And there's a lot of stuff out there where there's, you know, they do like the spirit cookings and, you know, the pool parties and all that kind of stuff. And we talked about, you know, when you get high level Freemasonry, it's kind of Luciferian. What the Vatican's doing, it's kind of Luciferian. And so to kind of go back again, the tangents, they shall fly. But the adrenochrome, what that is when the blood is filled with adrenaline. And, something that I've been looking into a little bit more is a little bit of this, like these practices that go on, like this kind of witchcrafty type stuff. That's like, oh, these people just listen to too many Slayer albums and whatever. But with adrenochrome, what that is, it's blood that's highly infused with adrenaline. And apparently one of the most purest forms of that is from a child, and a child with a lot of adrenaline in its system. So basically it's like, it sucks and it's scary. And I hate this, and it jams me up when I start talking about it. But like just torturing kids and harvesting them basically, because adrenochrome, it's a psychoactive, and it's what these people take that it apparently helps with aging and stuff like that. And it's supposed to, like we were talking about, take people to this higher place, be this supreme type being, and that ingesting that, like taking in this adrenochrome, that's a way to preserve the thing. And it's a huge thing that I think is a big part of what we talk about with the Illuminati and the New World Order. And again, tie that in with money and just controlling people. And I think a lot of that is to control this, because it's such a horrible thing going on. But that's my take on it. I'm curious to hear your response to it.
Well, I am going to be like one of those people and tell you it's always happened, but not trying to underblow it at all.
Right.
The Catholic Church has a long history of this sort of thing, connected with Spanish colonialization in the 1500s. And people just seem to whitewash that. And what part, and I hate to be I don't want to sound like a super American supremacist, because our country has its failings. But
we
part
do
of the
kick ass quite a bit, though.
But in our founding, we were founded as a country of spiritual freedom, and part of the reason why that's important to understand is we were also a country that was unable to be corrupted by one particular religion or branch of anything.
Yeah.
All right, and that was completely different than everywhere else in the world prior. Okay, and why I say this is important is because once you bring in the structure of something like the Catholic Church, it allows that stuff to happen. They can get away with that. And the problem in America is I think we've allowed sort of a Hollywood mass media group of people to get away with that. Hollywood. They are the structure, if you will.
Weird. Yeah, that Hollywood, man, that's a strange beast. And especially with like the Weinstein stuff and your Allison Macks and your Keith Raniere's, and
it goes back way before Weinstein even.
Oh, this is like, yeah, man, I mean, it's funny because what did he say? Was it his lawyer or something that said Harvey didn't invent the casting couch? It's like, well, I mean, yeah, since the days of Marilyn Monroe, even Shirley Temple, as sad as that is, man. Yeah, that stuff's been going on ever since Hollywood's been around.
And what bothers me, though, is that people don't take that and then say, well, maybe I should shut off the movies. I should not pay attention to these news networks. They don't do that, right? No. They say we need to start a movement of laws. It's like, you don't understand. There is no law to circumvent these kind of people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's one thing I'm learned about with like the Obama administration, and I shamefully say I voted for him the first time. I got tricked. I was all about like, man, everything's gonna be great. We're all gonna get along. We're all gonna have hugs, and it's gonna be wonderful. I don't think
you would have been any better off voting for McCain.
Yeah, you want to talk McCain? Man, there's some shady stuff that goes on with McCain, and I mean, that what is it? The mayor or the what is it? There's a Rothschild that's, I think, where is he in Arizona? Tucson? Is he the mayor of Tucson, I think? But yeah, John McCain has some really shady ties to a lot of this kind of stuff that also connect the dots. It goes back to the children too. And I think, yeah, that man has, if he doesn't keel over soon, he's going to have his day of reckoning, I think. But yeah, we went on. The tangent.
Basically, my point is that all this stuff has been happening for a while, but the problem is I think fundamentally the American people and a lot of people worldwide used to reject this kind of stuff, especially in the post-World War II era.
Yeah.
But people are becoming deaf to it and null to it again.
And I think it's systematic. I really think it's systematic too.
And I don't really have I wish I had a solution to propose, but
well, one thing, and this is something that I have gotten more courage to say recently is, I'm now a Trump supporter. I honestly think that Trump is probably going to get his face etched onto that spot on Mount Rushmore for the stuff that he's doing, because what he is doing since he's outside of the political sphere, I think he's kind of got like trying to avenge JFK type situation. And I think this has been in the mix for a long time, but man, the stuff that he is doing and the blowback that you see from this guy it's like he talks about how he's like, you're going to be sick of how much we're winning. And it's like, man, we are winning a lot. Like, the economy's great, unemployment's down, peace talks with North Korea, and, all this just great stuff that's going on. And no matter what, he's just getting pointed at. It's like, you're just this bad, horrible, racist, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to rally against you and your supporters and your cabinet. We're going to, push you out of society and da, 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 da. And you have to think about that. Like I kind of said earlier, those who are backed into a corner are usually the ones that scream the loudest and they're the most guilty. And so I kind of think right now that there might be some serious damage being done to this quote unquote New World Order. And that's why you see everybody just freaking out. And especially with what Trump has done as far as saving children and stopping the human trafficking thing. Here's if you want to have a little bit of a nutty theory, I think the reason some of these higher ups that are freaking out over that, because they're going through adrenochrome withdrawals. There, I said it. They're going through adrenochrome withdrawals, and that's what I think. And I think that now they're getting funding, like with like the Soros and stuff like that, and to call to action against people. There's my thought on it. I said it. Internet.
Well, I wouldn't call myself a strident Trump supporter.
Yeah.
I didn't vote for him.
I didn't either. I voted third party, and I know you did too.
But I will say, I do find him to be not part of the world order, and that upsets the world order. How long this will last, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what happens from here, because there's still clearly plenty of people within the higher ranks of all governments around the world that are part of this thing that we'll call the world order.
Yeah. Well, there are plans that are they keep on. It's kind of lock and step. It's just falling into place, and it's really cool. And I'm hearing things now about how like Iran might be one of the next things. How we might be auditing the Fed before too long, and there could be a chance that income tax could go away, and just all this crazy stuff. And it's, I don't know. I think part of it, a small part of it, is like I said, it's more like a vengeance for JFK type situation, because you remember JFK, he spoke out about secret societies. What happened to him? So.
Well, yeah, and of course, I love to harp on Senator Paul Wellstone, who, spoke out against the Iraq War and then mysteriously died in a plane crash a couple weeks later. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, it's weird when you see, when there's people that unfortunately die at two coincidental times, and these other like false flag type situations, and I think that there's also, puppets like at the top of the FBI that, are part of this whole thing and they're just complicit. It's so mind boggling how much they've actually accomplished. It's, in a way, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
I did say it's a higher level of human intelligence.
Yeah, and I think it's not one to play with. I don't think it's not one to play with at all. And it just really sucks that as far as it, like if I were to go out and it's like being a what it's cis white male or whatever, and it's like I've got 2 daughters. I care about family. I care about freedom. I care about the individual. I care about merit. And it's like all that is bad now. And it's just like, really? What, how did we get here? And you just have to think it's like people with bad motives are pulling some strings, and they've successfully done it for a long time. And I just hope sooner than later. I mean, just the fact that we're even talking about this is good. And the fact that it's going to be on the internet is good. And it's a tough thing for people to hear sometimes. And it's a thing that can be easily dismissed, but I don't know. And we've been made out to, like, people that are into conspiracies are made out to be crazy. I mean, like my grandfather, before he passed away, he was talking about when he was in the Air Force, he was running cargo in the North Korean War. And he said that there were a couple times like he flew over and he saw like strange objects flying in the sky. And it's like, oh, it's like his Alzheimer's onset and da da da. But now you hear stuff with like like the Space Force coming out, and that supposedly the reason for that is because there have been secret space programs going on. And me, as somebody who loves astronomy and has loved it for a long time, I'm starting to question that stuff now, because NASA is a government entity. And, it's like, I'm going back on these conspiracy theories, besides like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and stuff like that, but more government type conspiracies, and taking a different approach to it now. And there's some stuff that we all really, really need to question for reals.
Yeah, so I guess that is actually a pretty good ending statement you kind of gave there, Jay, without intentionally doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, but we'll sort of wrap it up here.
Yeah,
because we're getting on an hour anyway.
Yes, we are.
So yeah, basically, I believe that there are certain things out there that are way too coincidental, and I do think that there is a group with a vested interest in preserving a certain world order or status quo. Mm-hmm. I may not be quite as on board with some of the other things with Pizzagate and Podesta and that stuff, but I'm not going to be someone that ever outright disses anything.
Yeah, and you shouldn't either, because there's too many especially on the Pizzagate thing. I hate looking at it. I hate that my internet search history has this crap on it. But when you start looking into it, and you start connecting all these dots, it's gross, and it's Luciferian, and it's well hidden. And it gets to a point where, you start really looking at this like good, evil, God, Satan type situation. And, now that religion's been demonized thanks to all of the stuff that we're talking about, you're just made out to be insane. And I think this is a lot more real than people give it credit for. I really do. And we need to talk about this stuff more, and people need to have more dialogue without shutting each other down and calling each other names. And just, that's how you can find the true good people. It's like, if they start to attack you, you just need to, I don't know what you need to do, but people need to have dialogue and understanding about things, and just not accept, but take in what other people say, and at least process it, and talk to more people and try to connect dots.
Yeah. So yeah. And anyway, in summary, so let us all know, I'll post this, of course, and let us know, do you think there's a world order, and what any kind of conspiracy stuff along that lines you've read, and where it's from, and if you think this is a worldwide phenomenon, and if you think there is worldwide pushback as well. So thanks for coming on, Jay. It was good.
No problem. I actually really, really enjoyed this, and thank you very, very much. And God bless Patriots. Where we go one, we go all, and hopefully everything will be okay, because we just need to have more of this dialogue, and this is great. Thank you for this.
All right, no problem, man. That's it. We'll sign it off then.
All right, man.
Offline. Check out the Know Your Place podcast on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/knowyourplacepodcast, all one word, or on Facebook at facebook.com/knowyourplacepodcast, all one word. and we will be coming soon to YouTube and iTunes, and maybe another social media platform near you. Special thanks to my wife, Sarah, and Jay Graff for the riff.